how jMeter works and some of the components and things of that sort. And then finally, we're gonna execute the test we have created using Float.io. You might know this, but Float.io is a facility that allows us to execute the test in the cloud. And the reason we do that is because obviously executing our test from our local machines is definitely not optimal, in that normally laptops are, very short resources, memory, or CPUs. So yeah, 3 parts. So there we go. We're gonna go for the first one, which is the performance testing concepts. And I understand I usually start my presentations by defining what is performance testing. And in this case, I have pulled this definition from the Wikipedia. And one of the purpose of performance testing is determine if the system is responsible and stable. And responsible usually means if it's speedy or the response time itself is appropriate. And stable means that regardless what the response time it is, assuming it's again acceptable, it's always the same, including in moments of high demand. And a secondary purpose of performance testing is issues like, is the system reliable, meaning it can continue running for a good amount of time, it scales well when there's an increase of demand, and how well is using the resources. Is there using the resources? Are we matching the resources? Are we underusing those resources? And in this case, I'm talking about CPU and memory and things of such. Now, this concept are a little bit generic, so I always like to make sure that there is something more specific about them, and which is essentially related to the requirements. The customer, the business is going to give us a set of requirements, so we need to make sure that the performance test will meet those requirements, and that's and the client, the business will be able to accept, be able to say, yeah, this application meets our requirements. Another thing that is more specific when we do performance testing is the identification of bottlenecks in the resource saturation. The application itself will scale to a certain point, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, until it reaches a point where there is a bottleneck or there is a resource saturation, meaning we run out of CPU, we run out of memory, and or we reach a point where, for example, there is a network bottleneck. The network has been provisioned in such a way that it doesn't allow us to have the level of transaction required. So a little bit about that. So a quick distinction between functional testing and non-functional testing. In functional, we are testing how the application works. In performance, we are testing the performance of the functionality. And we are testing functionally what it does, but in terms of non-functionally, how it behaves. Again, go back to the concept is responsive, slow. And in terms, another distinction between functional and non-functional is that there are very specific results related to functional testing. However, in terms of non-functionality, what we're talking about is the speed and capacity. Let's see. There are different types of functional and non-functional testing. As you can see, we had unit integration, system testing, acceptance testing, and regression testing. But in the non-functional part, we have load testing, we have stress testing, volume testing, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a clear distinction between functional and non-functional testing types. Okay, we go into certain terminology that is very relevant in terms of performance testing. KPIs. KPIs are essentially measures or metrics, and there are many metrics associated to performance testing, but there are one that are key. They are key for in determining how it meets the requirements. And the most common ones is the throughput, how many transactions we can process per second, per minute, per hour, and response time. And again, there might be others that are important to meet the requirements. Could be error rate, for example. You can have a KPI that says do not use the CPU utilization cannot be over 80%. But these two are the most usually most common ones where the requirements are set to measure. Another important concept is the SLO, meaning the KPI, there's an objective that a KPI should reach, which is, for example, 3 seconds. 3 seconds of response time. That's the SLO. That's the objective. And in terms of the results we're going to obtain in the test. And another important concept is SLAs. The SLAs are agreements, usually it could be even legal, where we have committed to obtain certain KPIs to reach certain level. So the SLA can state that response time cannot be more than 2 seconds. Or it can state also that throughput can be has to be 100 transactions per second, for example. Okay, now why performance testing is important? And I think it's kind of a common knowledge that the slower the site, if it is a website, the greater satisfaction there is for the user. And in this particular case, it says here that 75% of the shoppers are dissatisfied and will never return to the site again. Really important that the system should perform to meet the expectations, not only of the clients or the customers, but the business. So here's where the SLAs come into play. If the SLA for that particular site is 3 seconds, and the place as a page is rendered, for example, a shopping cart, it definitely cannot reach that, go beyond that. And if the system, as its performance tested, cannot beat the SLA, obviously there's going to be a decision, perhaps no go, in terms of going to production. All right, when do we do performance testing? Usually performance testing, in many cases, in my experience, has been done at the end of the development, which in itself could be too late, given that many things are already baked. Many decisions, architectural decisions, coding decisions have already been done, and doing the performance testing at the end might reveal issues that might be very costly to fix. So, although doing performance testing at the beginning of the project, it might be expensive and perhaps even delay a little the production development schedule, is where the greatest benefit that is. And again, there is a cost associated to that in terms of perhaps delays, but issues can be discovered and remediated sooner than later. Assuming that later would be more expensive than having those issues resolved sooner. Okay, so what do we test? Obviously, and there you can see there are these 5, but there are many more. One of the things that comes to mind is the business critical scenarios. For example, a shopping cart, definitely. The SLAs, certainly. And one thing that I usually suggest is testing is when a particular transaction or business operation is very performance intensive, although it might not be necessarily the most important or business critical application. Okay, so what is the performance load testing? Is essentially mostly these 6 steps. You do a requirements, we plan, we design the tests, the scripts, we determine how we're going to monitor, we design the work log scenarios, and then we actually test, and which means building the scripts and executing the scripts. And once we have done that, we go into the phase of execution and collecting the results and presenting the results to the business if needed. That is an interactive process. We have to do this cycle multiple times until we all determine they were meeting the requirements as stated in the SLAs, or there is a situation where it's going to require some remediation that goes far from just tuning the system, or things like that. Developers might need to be involved, and remediation might take time. And hopefully, they will be able to deal with this issue, and we can reinitiate the test script that interact the process of executing or adjusting the scripts and executing the scripts. Finally, assuming the requirements had been met, we deliver the results to the business. Again, requirements analysis, we test plan, we design the test, we script the test, execute them, and deliver them. I just want to mention something important about the workload scenarios. And perhaps this is one of the most critical parts in terms of developing the, as I mentioned here, the test design. In this case, this is a simple case of reservation system. But as you can see, the use case scenario for this particular application, there are 2 options here, 2 paths that the customer, the user can go. He can look for a reservation, or he can check for a previous reservation. And within that path, 74% of the users will shop for a new reservation, and so on and so forth. The point of this is that when we design our test, obviously we're gonna set the script so 83% of the execution will be for getting an offer transaction, while 17% will be retrieve the reservation. Not all the transactions are the same, and not all the transactions follow the same path. So this is an important point when going about deciding the use cases. And obviously, and clearly, this information needs to be gathered during the requirements, meaning gather this information from the business to determine what are the transactions and what is the proportion of transactions and what is the user path while using the transactions. Okay, this is another important idea in terms of performance testing. And this is very counterintuitive because we, as humans, tend to think that everything is linear. Unfortunately, computers are not. So what are we trying to say in this graph is that at one point, although at one point in 3 phases in this case, we have a light load, heavy load, and buckle zone, meaning that in the light load, as we increase the number of users, we're going to see the response time represented by the blue line, steady state. We're going to see an increase of the throughput represented by the green line. And we're going to see increase on applications, utilization, sorry, because it stands to reason that the more work we do, the more resources we require. However, when we have heavy load, although the response time might slightly grow, the number of transactions are going to reach a level and eventually will decrease. They will no longer increase as the number of users increase. And usually the reason why, we talk about this a little bit, is that some sort of bottleneck or resource utilization. We run out of CPU, the memory is totally taken, the network is reach a level of saturation, etc. In the third phase, we have the buckle zone. In this case, the response time just goes through the roof, the transaction goes down, and the system fails. Again, this is one of perhaps if you want to remember something out of this presentation, I suggest this is the one. The performance is not linear. Don't expect that as you increase the number of users, the system will respond linearly. Will not. Okay, so just finishing this presentation, this part of the presentation, there are many tools for performance testing. The one we want to talk about today is jMeter. We have NeoLoad, which I particularly like very much. They have LoadRunner, and it's mostly targeted for legacy application. We K6 requires some scripting. I think it's Java scripting. They have Locus, it's a Python scripting, and Octoperf. Another type of tools, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, is programs as software. And normally in this category, we have these companies. They provide us the possibility of executing our scripts in the cloud. In this case, we have Flood.io, which is what I'm going to demonstrate today, BlazeMeter, NeoLoad, Octoperf, and others. All right, well, see, here's the plug for the class that we give, Performance Test United. This is definitely a hands-on course class that we give on I would say about 6 4-hour sessions. This is definitely hands-on and with a lot of interaction with instructors. And we go over all the concepts that we have discussed about and more, such as recording. We're going to do that today. But correlation, parameterization, control is everything from soup to nuts in terms of getting a good idea of how jMeter works. Again, this is the goals, and the sessions, which are 4 hours long, involves a lot of practice. So I encourage you to look into that. We're going to possibly Delbert is going to be sharing more details about it in the chat, and something worthwhile considering. Okay, so part 2, we are 25 minutes in an hour, and we're going to do a hands-on jMeter on practice, and essentially develop a very small script. You might know that jMeter has been around for a long time, has a very lively community, and they're constantly upgrading and adding more features, and it's free. So, and although the learning curve can be a little bit steep, once you get the idea, it's very simple to use. jMeter allows you to perform different protocols. Has a great IDE. We're going to look into that. Has a CLI mode. Allow us to run commands from the command line, and a lot of reporting while we're running the test or afterwards. And the ones that are particularly one that I want to mention here is the HTML report, which is very very informing and can be used to be presented to the business. Correlation is fantastic. It's pure Java, and it's multi-threading. Therefore, we can emulate several users at the same time. All right, with that, we had finished the first part of the, and we're going to move to the second part, which is do a hands-on demo of using jMeter. I hope you all see my screen. I have already installed jMeter. And to my left, and in the right, we have the target application we're going to be using. This is a simple test application that BlazeMeter makes available for people to practice. I encourage you to get familiar with it, and it's very straightforward. It's a reservation system. You can choose, where you're coming from and where you're going to go. Allows you to find the flights. Choose the flight, and then simulates entering your etc. City, state, zip code. And when you're ready, you can purchase the flight, and gives you a confirmation of the flight. And in case you are curious, also shows you the XML that returns the information. All right, so using this application, we're gonna demonstrate how to build a script in jMeter. To my right, I have jMeter, and let's see. The first thing we're going to be doing is recording this. Let me look at my notes so I can. Okay. So the first thing that we do on jMeter, I hope that you guys are following. Perhaps those can follow. Let me know. But the first part that you do when developing, once you start jMeter, you're going to see this screen. This is the IDE that I was talking about. The first step that we do is we add what is called a thread group. A thread group is a way to group all the threads or virtual users that are going to be executing the test. There are certain properties, and we're going to talk about this in a little while when we go about running the test. And some of them is the number of users, or it should be virtual users, how long we're going to wrap up the users, and one particular one in this case would be the duration. again, we are trying to record how we're going to interact with this application. So the next thing that we need to add is a recording component. The recording component will allow us to, while we're executing the application, record the steps in jMeter. Acts like a proxy. Therefore, we can, all the transactions, all the actions we take on the browser, it will be recorded or reflected in jMeter. Let's see. One important thing to keep in mind is, let's see if I can do this. Okay. The port, meaning that this is the port that jMeter is going to receive the information. For that, we're going to need to configure our browser, and we'll do that in a minute. So moving to the browser, we go into the settings. Well, in this case, I'm using Firefox. We look for this configuration, the network settings. Yeah. Here in the network settings, we're going to configure the proxy in the following way. We're going to choose some manual configuration. Again, the port is going to be 888, just like in this case. And we're going to use this proxy for HTTPS. When we have done that, okay. So all the actions that we gonna be entering again in our reservation system, we're gonna are gonna be recorded. And that is expected because we haven't started the process to record those. Let's see. One more thing is where we're going to record those transactions. And in this case, we're going to choose the test plan. Which is this thread group. Okay. So now we'll move a little bit ahead. Sorry. We're going to start the recording. We accept the certificate. And we move back to our application and we try again. You should notice here, we already start recording what's going on in the application. So we choose, let's say, Boston, and we choose Berlin. Find a flight. Looking again. There are a few more transactions being added to that recorded thread group. Choose a flight. And we go to checkout. Again, more transactions are being recorded in the thread group. So you're going to say, oh. I happen to live in New Jersey. We're going to be using a credit card. Everything looks great. and we purchase that flight. Don't do that. Okay, so we finished with this recording that, and we're going to stop. Okay, so if we look at the recording, we're going to see, let me make this screen a little bit bigger. Okay. In the thread group, we have recorded all kinds of information. Now, clearly, in each one of these transactions, there is the header, the HTTP header, and so on and so forth. Now, probably you will say, well, that's a lot of transactions for so many, for just a few. jMeter does add a few more events, and some of them are not necessary. So there is always a need to clean up the recording. In this particular case, we're just going to leave it at that. And now we are ready to execute this. But before we do that, we require another component that allows us to see the results. And that component is usually in the category of listeners, and listeners in the sense of, see me, I added the list. Oh, okay. Let me put this somewhere. Okay, I'm going to add the listener here. Oh, no, I cannot add it. Okay. So the results tree listener allow us to see how the transactions are progressing as we execute them. So we're going to execute this test and see how it works. Cross our fingers. And okay. Wait. Go to the. We are not able to execute the test for some reason, but let me see. Okay. Something might have been wrong with the, although I tried this many times, it usually doesn't work. Like demonstrations are very tricky in that sense. So I tell you what, we're gonna, let's give it another try and record it. And so we're just gonna remove this thread group. We got it again. And we're going to try to record this one more time. Here we are. Right. So again, with the same process, we have the report. We have the test plan to thread groups. Here. We have the port. We double check the proxy configuration. I say 88. You okay this? We go to all right, we're going to start recording again. We insert the certificate. And we'll relaunch the application. All right. Again, these are transactions that we are recording. And I think we're going to need to clean up a little bit later. We chose the default flights. We chose the default just to, here we go. And then we stop. All right. So going back to this. This time I'm going to do some cleaning because I think that let's see. I think jMeter has done added a lot more transactions that I needed. So we're just gonna clean up these ones. What I'm doing, I'm just disabling them. And we're gonna just keep the ones that we are interested. Just gonna remove the ones that we don't need. Because it seems to be that okay, so we have, let's see, we can get rid of this too, I assume. And this too. So here we have the most, we have the base demo. We do the reserve. This is the purchase, and this is the confirmation. This is the 4 transactions that are more interested. And now what we're going to do is, I think, in this case, we're just going to add quickly the listener we talk about, the results view. And we're going to try to execute this script. Aha. All right. So we expected the results tree listener reflects the different types of transactions. In this case, this shows you the results. Here we can see the request, and here we can see the response time, or response data. Same thing with the reserve. The result, what request we did, the post containing the port from where we're leaving from and where we're going. We have the purchase, again, the flight, the price, where we going, etc., etc. So you can see that. We also can look at the response data. We can see the response headers, the body, etc. Same thing with the confirmation. All right, so now we have the we see that transaction, the test completes successfully. We should add another another listener that will allow us to see the results, in this case, in terms of some KPIs. Let me choose another one. I think this is more interesting. As you can see, there is a variety of listeners that you can use, and we're going to use this one. Take this away. The aggregate results shows some very interesting KPIs, the average, by 90 percentile, by 95 percentiles, and some other information. So with this, let's go ahead and execute the test again. In this case, we're still using one thread and one loop. So we go and execute the test. The results tree reflects another execution. In theory, before I continue, using this option, we clean all the results, and we're going to re-execute this. Look at the results tree. There are the 4 transactions, the 4 requests. We look at a report, and we see there were 4 samples executed, give us the average response time, and it tells us that 90% of them were under, on average, 457. Clearly, the transactions had different response times because it depends what kind of transactions are in the backend, right? Now, since this is something, the name of the transactions is not that really intuitive, you can go ahead and say, rename the transactions. And we can say this, it's all right. All right. So this makes a lot more sense. We are in the home. We have renamed that request to make it more user-friendly, and we can understand what they're doing now. Now, just to complete this point, now we have a working script with 4 requests. We can see the results, and now we are in a position to add more users. And we're going to run it for, let's say, 5 times. We'll clean our results, and we execute this. So as you can see, the requests are being submitted, and we look at the aggregate report, and now it's done. So we have that the requests are being executed a larger number of times, and we have different results because we have certain degree of concurrency. Again, the average, we have the 90 percentile, and we can also say the minimum, how long, etc. So this is the way to analyze the results. And as I say, there are many more listeners that we should be able to add to this script. Other things we might consider doing is adding some pauses between requests. What I'm talking about is when you make a reservation, it's going to take you longer to make a reservation while you choose where you're going. But when you do the purchase, it's going to take you even longer. So one of the things that usually to make this script more realistic, we're going to add a timer, for example. We're going to say that the user is going to take, let's see, 5 seconds to read, to do the reservation. So do the purchase. Well, it enters his credit card and things of that sort. So again, these timers allow us to make the script more realistic because it shows you, it kind of reflects how long the user is taking to enter the constant timer. Finally, and again, talking about listeners, there's one that I particularly like, and that kind of visualizes what we're doing. In this case, let's execute the same test. And here we are seeing the number of threads that are being instantiated to execute the test. We say there are 10 users. And the number of threads in the graph show us that there are 10 threads running. As I said, there are many more listeners that you can use in order to analyze the results. Hits per second, response codes, etc., etc. Anyway, I think that's pretty much gives you an idea how to record a test, how to clean the test, how to rename that, perhaps add listeners to see the results, add constant timers to make the load realistic, and and alter the number of users or concurrent users, try to simulate the workload that this application will expect when 10 users are using the application. Obviously, there might be some SLA that says we need 100 users or 1,000 users, and that will need to be reflected in the way we configure the script. Let's see. All right, I think that we're running in, and we are at 10:55. I don't know if we're going to have time to show you how to this test is executed in the cloud. And the reason, again, is executed in the cloud because obviously running the test in my laptop, given that my laptop has some limitations, would not allow me to instantiate 1,000 users or 5,000 users. That's why I have to have a service such as Float.io. That's the one that my company uses, but there are others, as I said, jMeter being the daddy of all of them. So just quickly, just to give an idea, a feel how it works. This is the one of the screens that allow us to design the test. And what you're going to do here is load the test, and all you do is choose where that test could be, and that's something that I don't Let me see if I can find that. I think it's no. Okay, sorry. Oh. Hmm. Hang on. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Okay. One thing we should do is save the script, and I think that's something that I didn't do. So here we're just going to save the script. Okay. So let's go back to the. No, I don't have that. There is. See if I can find the script. That's our script. And that's one, I call it. This is the JMX script, the jMeter script. We can choose what kind of tool we're going to use. In this case, we're going to leave it alone, jMeter. And we can add more other parameters. And now we're ready to launch the script. There's nothing missing here. Oh. Yes. Great. Yeah, now ready to launch. We had to select where we're going to launch it. Flood.io has different areas in the US and Europe and Asia. I'm going to choose one node. You say one. And let's see, we're going to we can run it for 1 minute. See, we got the design and the launch. IO. Well, we can run it in 2 if you like, but no, we're going to do it in. Let's see. And we can launch a test. The test is being queued. The flood is the execution, and then there is going to be some data points. But in the meantime, I'm just going to show you the results of let's see. This is how I I chose the wrong one. Let's see my demo here. There's not one that I want to use. There's so many tests in this particular area for different projects. Wait. Okay, there you go. This is the way the results are presented. And once the test is completed, we have a timeline. In this case, we have only one request, and we can look at the request in more detail. But anyway, That's to give an idea that the purpose of using this kind of functionality facilities, that your laptop is not capable to running a number of users, a large number of users that might be requested by the design or the SLO, the SLA in this case. I think that that concludes the demonstration. It's 11 o'clock, the webinar. So I'm going to stop sharing and let our hostess take over the.
Thank you so much. That was actually a very good presentation. Maybe you can share some links for this tool as well, so that I can also double check, because in my company we actually using performance testing, but in very basic way. So it would be really interesting to know, more details, how to run it on cloud as well. Let me check some questions. I know that you had exact 1 hour, right? So you have to probably run. So yeah, I don't want.
Minutes. I have a couple of minutes if there's any questions that we can answer quickly. Although we're thinking that others we might do some more due diligence, and perhaps with those we can answer them. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there were no questions at this particular point, but yeah, maybe if folks can write something in comments after the call, after the webinar, because this webinar will be recorded and being in YouTube. So that maybe if there are some questions particularly about something we don't know, you can answer later on. I can share the link later to the recorded session itself. But yeah, if you can maybe share probably with me, and I will put it to description, the tool, this last tool, float something. It will, if you can share it, maybe it would be nice to put it in the description. And yeah, and what maybe the details you mentioned about the course as well at the beginning, so we can add it to the description of the video, so it will be always there.
Right. I assume that Delvis isn't online and he's able to. But let's just include this plot.io.
It's fine. I mean, you can send it later as well. So yeah,
okay.
I will just edit it later, so it's not a big deal. It's just more like for information, so people who will watch the webinar will be always having the reference. And yeah, as of now, since there's no many questions, I think we can wrap up. It was really a pleasure to see the all details and everything about jMeter itself. I will go through the video myself and, memorize a bit, because it's been a while. Yeah, looking forward for the tool. Just like once you send it to me, I might also explore it a bit. And thanks everyone who joined, and yeah, hopefully to see you soon on the future webinars. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
Bye.